go through it. So, the test is on Module 14, Proofs with Lines and Angles. Starts with Lesson 14.1, Angles Formed by Intersecting Lines. Okay. Angles formed by intersecting lines. Okay, so here's a pair of intersecting lines. Jordan, give me an example of a pair of vertical angles.
So 1 and 3 would be, or 2 and 4?
1 and 3 or 2 and 4, good. And Jake, angle 1 and angle 3, what are they? Are they supplementary or congruent? Good. Vertical angles are congruent, so angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Sol, give me an example, please, of a linear pair of angles. 1 and 2, good. And Devin, linear pair of angles, are they congruent or supplementary? Good. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. So the two angles are supplementary. Cool? Any questions on that? Okay, so a reasonable question would be, what would that show up like on the test? How would I be asked a question on something like that? Well, I could say to you, for instance, that the measure of angle 1 is 2x plus 10. And I could tell you, for instance, that angle 3 is 50 degrees. The measure of angle 1 is 2x plus 10. And the measure of angle 2 is 20y plus 30. And say, go ahead and solve for x and y. So go ahead and do that now. Solve for x and y. Yes? I didn't check you guys' homework. I'm going to check it after our review. Go ahead and solve for x and y. Okay, so to start, we have to solve for the measure of angle 1, which since it's vertical, we know is 50 degrees, and the measure of angle 2. 1 and 2 are supplementary, so they add up to 180, so angle 2 has to be 130. So to solve for x, I just set 50 equal to 2x plus 10. Subtract 10 from both sides. I get 40 equals 2x. divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals 20. So that's done. And then to solve for y, I use 130 is the measure of angle 2. So 130 equals 20y plus 30. Subtract 30 from both sides. I get 100 equals 20y. Divide both sides by 20. I get y equals 5. Is that pretty clear? I think that's pretty straightforward. Any questions on that? So that's a good example of something I could ask you on the test. So what we're going to do in this review is we're going to kind of just march through the homework. We've already handled 1, 2, and 3, 4. This stuff, numbers 6 through 9, you should know those kinds of things. We're not going to cover them specifically. This, though, 10 through 12, we are going to cover right now. Complementary and supplementary. If two angles are complementary, what do they add up to, class? 90 degrees. And how would I represent that? If I say the complement of an angle, how would I represent the complement of an angle? 90 minus x. And supplementary, two supplementary angles
180.
add up to 180 degrees. And how would I represent that? A supplement of an angle? 180 minus x. Good. So if we end up with a question like number 11, and I ask you to solve for the angle, you can do that. Those tools, though, the fact that a complement is 90 minus x and the supplement is 180 minus x is something that you just got to remember. Okay, so I start with the measure of a supplement. Represent that by 180 minus x. The measure of the supplement of an angle is an equal sign. 3 times, that's a 3. The measure of its complement is 90 minus x. That's the hardest part. But go ahead and solve that algebraically now. Solve that on your own. Okay. 180 minus x equals, distribute the 3. 3 times 90 is 270. Minus 3 times x is 3x. I add 3x to both sides. I subtract 180 from both sides. 3x cancels out here. 180 cancels out here. Negative x plus 3x is 2x. Equals 270 minus 180 is 90. Divide both sides by 2. We get x equals 45 degrees. Cool? So the measure of the angle is 45 degrees. Any questions on that? All right. Next. So proofs. We're going to come back to this proof at the very end, But the proof is not going to be like this, where you're just asked to like write a plan for a proof. It's going to be more like this, where you're asked to fill in the blank in a 2-column proof. There'll be 4 blanks. You'll get 1 point for each blank that you fill in. You will have to understand the correct terminology. You have to use the correct terminology. But we're going to go over that later. So just put that on your radar for now. That's it for 14.1. Lesson 14.2. All right, 14.2 is parallel lines. 14.2 is parallel lines and transversals. Okay. So this is where we learned about corresponding angles, same side interior angles, alternate interior angles, and alternate exterior angles. Okay. So let's actually start with in a little bit of a different way than I did last class. Oh, let's do it. Okay. Angle 4 and angle 6. Angle 4 and angle 6. Leslie, did I call on you yet? I think so. No? Leslie? Okay. What kind of angle pair is that? Angle 4 and angle 6? Not quite corresponding. Corresponding would have the same position. So angle 4 and angle 8 would be corresponding because they would be both on the bottom right. Sure.
Sometimes same side interior.
Good. They're on the same side of the transversal and on the interior, the inside of the parallel lines. So they're same side interior. Okay, next. Angle 5 and angle 8. Grant. What would you say angle 5 and angle 8 are? Vertical angles. Very good. Vertical angles. Angle 2 and angle 6. What would you say, Angie? Corresponding. Very good. Those are corresponding. They're in the same position, both on the bottom left. You see? Bottom of the transversal on the left of the parallel lines. And the next one, angle 4 and angle 5. What would you say, Marley? What was that? Alternate interior. Very good. All right, and then the last one, it's not on there, but what about if I said angle 1 and angle 8? Angle 1 and angle 8. What would you say, Nesa? It's not on there. No. They're on alternate and they're on the outside, so it would be alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior. Cool? All right. Now let's talk about these. Corresponding angles are what? Congruent or supplementary? Congruent. Congruent. Alternate interior angles, congruent or supplementary? Congruent. Vertical angles, congruent or supplementary? Congruent. Alternate exterior angles, congruent or supplementary? Congruent. Same side interior angles are supplementary. The way that Mr. Henry teaches it is same side sup. So the only ones that are supplementary are same side, and there's another angle pair that's supplementary. Linear pair. Linear pair and the same side, interior or exterior angles are supplementary. Does that make sense? Mr. Morris is just like, man, got this in my back pocket. Looking forward to it. Mr. Morris, you're joining us from college algebra, right? Did they cover this in college algebra already? No, they covered this. You guys got this, and do you guys remember when you got this stuff? Which class? Geometry, right? So most of you guys got this 2 years ago, maybe some 1 year ago, last year. I doubt it though. I think if you're in this class, it means that you've already taken Algebra 2. Everyone here has taken Algebra 2, right? Yeah. So, which means that you took this, maybe you took it simultaneously with Algebra 2, but probably not. All right, cool. Next. Number 4. Okay, suppose the measure of angle 3 is 105. 3 is 105. Find the measure of angle 6. Well, what kind of angle pair is that, Andres? Number 4, yep. Angle 3, you could just look on the board. Angle 3 and angle 6. I've got them highlighted. Same side. Interior. They're on the inside of the lines, right? So, same side interior, which means they are what? Congruent or supplementary, sir?
They are
Supplementary, good. So if I want to find angle 6, I just take 180, subtract 105 from 180, and I get 75 degrees. That's my answer. Cool? Any questions on that? All right. Cool. Continuing on. I'm not going to specifically go over these, but like 15, 16, 17, those word problems are good for you to go over in your review. I don't know if I made them for you for your homework, but yeah. So you should do those, and then that's basically it for this lesson. Any questions on this lesson? Okay. All right. Proving lines are parallel. Lesson 14.3. So lesson 14.2 showed us that if two lines are parallel, then we know things about corresponding angles or whatever, they're congruent. But proving line parallel says if you know the angles are congruent, then that proves the lines are parallel. So the best example of that, lesson 14.3, that's what we're on right now. 14.3 is proving lines parallel. Okay. 14.3 is proving lines parallel. I've got a question almost exactly like this on the test, so, you know, should probably pay attention. So this one, remember you got to look for the clues. First clue is corresponding angles. Second clue is angle 1. So, Tori, what is a corresponding angle to angle 1?
Angle 5.
Good. So I know I fill in this blank with angle 5. And what fills in this blank? The corresponding angles theorem. If what, then the angles are congruent, Carolina?
If lines L and M are parallel.
Right, good. So if line L is parallel to line M, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. Mr. Morris, what would the converse be of that statement?
If angle 1 is congruent to angle 5, then line L and M are parallel.
Good. There you go. Cool. Good. Any questions on this? Okay, so you have to be able to recognize the theorem and its converse. Right? So moving forward from there, this is something good to go over, I believe. So we're going to number 4. Your homework. Okay, so matching. It says match the angle pair relationship A through F with the name of the postulate or theorem that you can use to prove that lines L and M in the diagram are parallel. So let's go ahead and start. A is 2 is congruent to 6. Which of these could I use, Allie? Good. Those are two corresponding angles. If they're congruent, I can use the converse of the corresponding angles theorem to prove that the lines are parallel. The next one, angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. Lorraine, which of those could I use? What was that? Good. Converse of the alternate interior angles theorem. Very good. Those are alternate interior angles, so that's what I use. 4 and 5 are supplementary. Angle 4 and 5. Which one would I use there, Amariah? 4 and 5. Good. Converse of the same side interior. Next, angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. Which one would I use there, Angela? Good. Converse the corresponding angles. Next one. Angle 3 plus angle 6 are 180, or in other words, they're supplementary. Which one would I use, Nicole? Converse of the same side. And last but not least, angle 4 is congruent to angle 6. Which would I use for that one, Skylar? Good. Very good. Okay. So it's basically just recognizing what kind of angle pair it is. And then just saying, oh, it's the converse because I'm trying to prove the lines are parallel. Cool? Any questions on this? All right. Good. Let's keep going. 5 through 8 are good to be able to use. 9 through 12 are good because I've got similar style questions, like word questions on the test. So we're going to go through number 12. So it says a trellis consists of overlapping wooden slats. What must be the value of x in order for the two slats to be parallel? So here are my two slats. And then we're given these two angles here. These are my two angles. What type of angle pair is that, Isaiah?
That's converse. Wow.
It's all right.
Corresponding.
Corresponding, good. And what do I know about corresponding angles? Good. They're congruent. So if the angles are congruent, Mr. Barreto, what do I know about the measures of the angles? If the angles are congruent, then the measures are equal. It's just kind of a simple question. If they're congruent, no, you said supplementary, I think. Anyhow, so I just set them equal to each other. Does that make sense? If they're congruent, then their measures are equal, so I set them equal to each other, and then solve. End up with 24 equals 7x minus 3x is 4x. Divide both sides by 4. And I get x equals 6. Does that make sense? Okay, so if I'm proving that those lines are parallel, then the corresponding angles have to be congruent. If they're congruent, then the measures must be equal. So I just set them equal and solve. And then I can plug it in just to check. 3 times 6 is 18. 18 plus 24 is 42. 7 times 6 is 42. So both of these angles are 42 degrees, which is what I would expect if those lines are parallel. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Any questions? All right. Okay, so that's that for that lesson, which moves us to lesson 14.4. The best way that I can kind of prepare you for this one is to go through questions 9 through 11. So in this case, we're given that PB, line PB is the perpendicular bisector of line AC. So let's take a look at number 10. Suppose PA equals 10 centimeters and PB equals 6 centimeters. It says find the length of AC. Well, if this is the perpendicular bisector, what do I know about AB and BC? They are congruent. Good. So I can take out this triangle here that's 10, 6, and that side there. If it's a perpendicular bisector, I know this is a right angle, so this is 10, this is 6. I don't know the length of this side, but if I want to find AC, I have to find that side and then just double it to find the total of AC, right? So how do I find X if this is a right triangle? Pythagorean theorem, good. So which one is the hypotenuse? Brian, which one of these is the hypotenuse?
What is it, 10?
10, good, because it's opposite the right angle. Very good. So it's x squared plus 6 squared equals 10 squared. Go ahead, you guys, and solve for x. Go ahead and solve for x. So I get x squared plus, what's 6 squared, class? 36 equals 10 squared is 100. I subtract 36 from both sides. I get x squared equals 64. What do I do now, class? Square root of both sides. I get x equals 8. Cool, so this is 8. So does that mean AC is equal to 8? Oh, Ethan, what's AC going to be equal to? If this is 8, that's just this part. But I know if this is 8, then what's this, Ethan? If they're congruent and this is 8, then this is 8. Good. And AC is the total distance from here to here. So Jordan, back to you. What's the total distance from A to C? Oh, 16. 8 plus 8 is 16. What's the length of AC? 16. Good. Next. A lot of people had questions on this. Number 11, find angle 3 plus angle 4. Well, if this is 90 degrees, then I don't know the individual measures of 3 and 4, but I know that they have to add up to 90 degrees. Their sum is 90 degrees. I don't know what 3 is or 4, but I know that they add up to 90 degrees. The next one, number 9, says measure of angle 2 is 38 degrees. Well, if this is 38 degrees, what's the math term for 2 and 1? They are what kind of angle, Jake? What kind of angle pair? 1 and 2.
1 and 2 are
Complementary, which means they add up to 90. Good. So I do 90 minus 38. I get 52 degrees. So angle 1 is 52 degrees. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, any questions on that? All right. Yes, sir.
Could you find the length of the bottom by adding the hypotenuse of one of the triangles and then the middle section?
It happens to work out that way in this case,
Yeah.
but it definitely won't. Always that. It's just kind of an interesting property of those numbers. Good observation, though. Okay. Next thing I want to go over is just number 12 and 13. And we're just about there. Okay, number 12 says suppose measure of angle 7 is 30 degrees. Find angle 3. So it wants me to find angle 3. So this angle 7 is 30. Well, I know angle 3 is congruent to angle 8. And angle 7 and angle 8 are complementary, right? So if I want to find angle 3, I just do 90 minus 30 is 60 degrees. So that's 60 degrees. Okay? And number 13, suppose measure of angle 1 is 90 degrees. So this is the right angle. Find M2 plus M3 plus M5 plus M6. Well, 2 plus 3 have got to be 90, and 5 plus 6 have got to be 90. So it's 90 degrees plus 90 degrees is 180 degrees. That's your final answer. Cool? Any questions on this? All right. That rounds out that lesson. Oh, last thing. This statement here. Two lines intersect to form a linear pair of congruent angles. What are the measures of these angles? Two lines intersect to form a linear pair of congruent angles. What's the measure of those angles? The only way to have a linear pair of congruent angles is if both angles are 90 degrees. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. Other than that, the last thing to cover is just the proof. So if you're following along in your book, you can turn back to lesson 14.1. And we can go through the proof. So, like I said, it's going to be 4 blanks. Each blank is worth 1 point. It's going to be very similar in the sense that it's like, I'll give you the statement, like in this case it says if two angles are congruent, then their supplements are congruent, and you're asked to prove that. And then you just fill in the blanks. Quick thing, first off, there's no partial credit for blank. The partial credit is in the fact that you're getting 1 point for each blank. You don't have to get them all right to get the credit for the question. It's a free response. It's not multiple choice. So you're not going to get partial credit for like a blank. So if you should write definition of supplementary and you just write supplementary, you're not going to get the credit. You know what I mean? So make sure you're writing that. If you should be saying linear pair theorem, and you say linear pair, you're not going to get the credit. So you have to make sure you're using the terminology that you've seen throughout, okay? So what you're being tested on now, I think that I made it pretty fair. Like there's not a whole lot of mental leaps that you have to do. You just have to be able to recognize the different things that you've used before. So it's not like some crazy hard proof. I think I made it pretty fair. So what you're being tested on right now is that you can recall the different things. Can you recall that if measure 1 plus measure 2 is equal to 180 degrees, and that's right after saying that they're supplementary, well, how do I know that they add up to 180 degrees? That's the definition of supplementary angles. Does that make sense? Okay. Like if I say two angles are congruent, and then the next thing is that their measures are equal, well, that's the definition of congruence, definition of congruent angles. Does that make sense to you guys? So you're not necessarily being asked to like really prove something, because when you're filling in the blanks, it's got the steps already there for you. It's more about recalling the different terminology and being able to understand why or what statement comes next. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so this one says if two angles are congruent, then their supplements are congruent. So you're given that two angles are congruent. ABC is congruent to DEF. And then you need to talk about their supplements because you need to get there eventually. So it says the measure of the supplement of angle ABC.
Mr. Veneer, hello. No, he didn't show up tonight. No.
All right. So, the measure of the supplement of angle ABC is 180 minus the measure of ABC. That's the definition of the what of an angle. It's only one word that could possibly make sense there. Supplement. Exactly. And this is the thing. When you're going through the test, don't think that you're going to have to like do something that you've never done before. It's all logical, so it's like only one thing could make sense. Okay? The measure of the supplement of angle DEF equals 180 minus the measure of DEF. It's the same thing. So again, the definition of the supplement of an angle. Okay? Next thing, it gives us the reason, not the statement. If two angles are congruent, their measures are equal. There's only one thing that could make sense there. So, if two angles are congruent, their measures are equal. What two angles do I know are congruent? So this reason would be implying that the statement is not that the angles are congruent, but that their measures are equal. So this would be saying the measure of ABC is equal to the measure of DEF. Okay? Then this one, the measure of the supplement of DEF equals 180 minus the measure of ABC. So they substitute it in here. So it's the substitution property of equality. And then here, they said they're equal to the same thing, so that means they're equal to each other. What property is that? If transitive. If two things are equal to the same thing, then they're equal to each other. That's the transitive property of equality. And then finally, the supplement of angle ABC is congruent to the supplement of what angle? DEF. Okay. The blanks on the test are more like this. They're not like this. Like they're the whole thing, not just like a little segment of it. So just so you can know. But it is just filling in the blank. Any questions? All right, cool. All right, so that's your test. You know the deal. Make sure you study for it. I will be here after school today. So if you guys need to hang around or have any questions, I might be able to help you with that. So, good. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't here last night.
Yeah, I'm going to come around.